The Walking Dead Season 1 by Telltale Games was a groundbreaking game. I would argue that it shaped the choice-based genre as a whole. Think of all the games that came after it that share similarities, even if a lot of those games are made by the same company. Hell, my last video was about Dispatch, which gameplay-wise is a carbon copy of this game, and that's not a bad thing. Telltale had a formula, and it worked, at least until it didn't, but we'll get there in a later video. What made this game so phenomenal? It's two simple factors, I think. You as the player, though you make decisions, are never really the leader of the group until the end, and the human connection between the two main protagonists. The story is phenomenal, absolutely amazing, and though a game this old, even if this is the remaster I'm recording, shows its age in bugs, graphics, and writing, it still conveys a compelling story nonetheless, one that arguably pioneered the genre. This game is basically the father of all modern choice-based games. Was it the first? No. But did it break into the mainstream and show everyone what this kind of game is capable of? Absolutely. Back to the story though, like I said, it's amazing. You play as Lee Everett, a convicted murderer who only barely skips jail time by getting in a car accident on his way to prison. You make your way to a nearby house during the ensuing chaos and eventually meet a little girl. Her name is Clementine. Now this former university professor turned murderer is in charge of a 9-year-old girl, and by proxy, you the player are in charge of raising a little girl in the apocalypse. Now, if you're like me, your immediate reaction is like, oh, so The Last of Us, but comic book. And to be fair, I have no idea which one came out first, but you literally could not be more wrong. Ellie is a capable survivor who was born into the end of the world, but Clementine is a child surviving the collapse of civilization. And with the survival comes trauma and consequences. For example, the entire game, Clem is constantly asking about trying to find her parents, as they went on a vacation not too long before the world went to utter shit. Now, you, I, and Lee all know that her parents are most likely dead, if not walkers, but still, I could never work up the courage to tell her outright that they were dead, even if we all knew it. I think she kind of knew it too, she just didn't want to admit it. The fact that I couldn't work up the courage to tell her that her parents are dead says more about me than Lee, but it shows you, the viewer, a very important quality of the game. You choose how to raise a child. It's not linear in the sense of you care for a kid in the same way you do Babysitting Simulator 2016. You get to choose what morals you teach her, what actions you'll take to protect her, whether you think it's safer to keep her home while you go out or safer by your side. Everything this little girl does is up to you, and I think the most twisted part is that you are not her dad. Lee has zero obligation to care for Clementine. Lee has zero ties to Clementine. If he left her alone in that house, he'd be a fucking asshole, but ultimately not responsible for her at all. Throughout the game, people will either mistake him for Clem's dad or ask where her parents are, and each time, Lee gets visibly uncomfortable. He knows he's not a dad, he's never had a kid, and his family life is a complete mess as is. I mean, his parents and brother weren't on the best terms with him before the end of the world, and he literally killed a senator because his wife cheated on him with said senator, which is so valid. So Lee isn't exactly a family man, and he knows this. You can admit as Lee that you don't know what you're doing, but you're doing your best nonetheless. So even though Lee doesn't have to care for this kid, and arguably isn't even the right man for the job, he still does, and he does it to his damn well best. Applause to you, Lee. You may not be a dad by blood, but you still get the best dad mug this Father's Day. And as for Clementine, she's a helpless being in a world that is literally looking to eat her alive. An 8-year-old in the zombie apocalypse is basically a prime rib to the undead hordes. She's just easy pickings, but with a 6-foot, 200-pound hunk in front of her, the zombies might think twice. Back to Clem. When you first meet her, she's hiding in her treehouse, clearly scared of the world around her, only coming down to give us a hand and a hammer to kill her former babysitter. Then she tags along with us, as you all know. But to get a bit deeper with her story, we watch her transform from just a kid in the apocalypse to someone who, though is still young, is capable and ultimately more accustomed to this new world. And even though that's an asset to have, it's incredibly depressing that it happened to her. No kid should have to go through that. But as the world itself changed, so too did growing up as a concept, and in turn, the act of raising kids as well. While in the modern real world, we can afford to soften the blows of this world to our children, in a dying world we can't. Now, I've never had a kid, so take this all with a grain of salt, but when your kid's pet dies, you usually tell them that they're in a better place. Heaven, paradise, a farm upstate, whatever. But in a world where the dead rise, can you even say that? Can you truly say that the dead are better off now? That they made it into heaven when heaven is seemingly getting more and more distant with each second? No, you can't. In a new world like this, you should be honest with them. Of course, in a game like this, Lee's honesty is kind of optional, but why lie anymore? What reason do you have to lie to Clementine? Maybe to preserve her innocence, sure, but at the end of the day, you have to find a gray area in that regard. hard. One where you aren't telling your kid to be afraid of death in a world that's dying, but you're also not lying and telling them that the guy who got bit is going to be okay. You have to make sure that she knows how to survive while still at least somewhat trying to maintain that childlike innocence and charm almost. I don't know. The morality of raising a kid is very confusing already. What do you teach them? How can you make sure they turn out better than you? And throwing zombies in the mix of it only makes it harder. I think we can all agree when we say that Lee, and in turn us as the player, did the best that we could in a shitty situation. I found myself feeling guilty almost every time I spoke to Clem, especially in the later episodes, as I saw her innocence slowly fade and heart grow colder and colder as she saw almost everyone around her die. It's genuinely tragic. And I do mean almost everyone. Throughout the game, we lose characters left, right, and center. Sean, Carly, Larry, Mark, Doug, Kat, Duck, Chuck, and then she even gets taken, only to learn that Ben and Kenny died later, or at least she would be led to believe so, and that Lee was bitten. There's also the characters that didn't die but departed from the group one way or another. Glenn, Lily, Molly, none of them died as far as she knows, but they're still gone and very much unlikely to ever be seen again. She has met so many people and they all almost always go, one way or another. She has seen more death than one kid should ever have to experience, and yet she carries on. And honestly, that in itself is amazing. We applaud you, Clem, for all the carrying on you do. Now on to the other point. This one isn't half as important as Lee and Clem in my opinion, but it's still incredibly important, as throughout the game, you make choices that impact the story, like who to save, who to side with, and who to trust, as well as bigger choices throughout the story, like life-altering choices. Sometimes decisions that decide the fate of the group, or one single individual. But ultimately, you are in charge. For most of the story, you and your group either act democratically or follow one leader. At the start, that leader is surprisingly Lily. Now, Kenny is constantly contesting with Lily, and you can argue that he's like a second leader or a person attempting to usurp Lily's power. But look at it like this. Lily is the one usually on watch. She's the one trusted with the bolt-action rifle, the only powerful weapon at the camp, and she's the one who ambushes the bandits when they try to raid the motel. And finally, she decides who eats and when they eat. Do note that in the game, Lily doesn't decide who eats, it's actually you, but she gives you that responsibility. Initially, it was her, but out of protest, she chose you to do it. Honestly, all that I can fault Lily for in hindsight is supporting her dad, and even though her dad is an asshole, I can't say I blame her. Now, my dad isn't Larry levels of bad, but I wouldn't say he's a fan favorite either. That being said, I'd side with my dad to the end of the earth and then some, and Lily is doing the same. Larry is an ass, but Lily is just trying to keep things steady and uphold justice, especially when she's trying to find out who was slipping the bandits' supplies. She just wanted justice for the suffering caused by whoever did it. Was it a bit totalitarian? Absolutely. Should it have been handled differently? 100%. And that's why we leave Lily on the side of the road. Or not, but you totally should. After that, you're at the whim of Kenny. He drives the RV, he conducts the train, he leads the group to Savannah. He is, by default, the leader. And the closest we come to a point of lead is by doing all of the work. But honestly, that could be chalked up to gameplay reasons. Either way, you don't decide much solely for the group. Rather, you get told what to do, and you do it. You're a right-hand man until you're not. See, that's a funny joke. But it also loops back to Lee's care for Clementine. Once Clem goes missing, Lee takes charge. He tells other people who follow him what the plan is. He decides who goes, when, and where. He's the one who makes sure that everything that happens is for the safety of Clem. Now, one small note I want to add to the end of this video is the antagonist of the final episode. It's revealed the antagonist of this chapter is getting revenge on us for stealing his supplies in the second chapter, whether we actually did or not. Our group takes the supplies either way, but still, he gives us his backstory. A reason, and by the end of his monologue, you see him as something less than the monster he's presented as, maybe even a human. He talks about how he lost one of his kids during a hunting trip, and his wife resented him for it, and the relationship only got worse when the station wagon supplies were stolen by us. At some point, his wife dies, and he just loses it, keeping her head in a bowling bag. But throughout the story, I almost empathized with him. He wasn't some madman out to kill Clementine, or do any other harm to her for that matter. He was a broken man who, in all honesty, thought by kidnapping this girl, he was saving her. Now, was he right? Obviously not even close. But in his twisted mind, he thought he was. I can't even blame him. He's seen so much death and destruction, as we all have to this point, but obviously, he couldn't handle it as well. and it's taken a toll on him. Of course, no matter how human he may seem to you, there's only one way to deal with this kind of man. This video was honestly just an excuse to talk about a game that I really love and one that I replayed because I like Dispatch so much. I wanted to go back and see some of the older games that defined the genre. I'm happy I played through it again, as even though I played it back when I was a kid, as an adult now, my mind has changed on a lot of the choices I made back then, and I played it almost completely different. And one last note, I think one of the main reasons Telltale fell under was because of content creators playing through the game and uploading their playthroughs. Now, I'm not saying we can't do that. I like seeing people choose differently or similarly to me. But I will say this, if you like these kinds of games, even if you've already seen every inch of the game through videos, I still think you should purchase them and play them yourself, as not only does it support the developers, but it's also a different experience altogether. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, I'd really appreciate a subscribe, maybe a like too if you think I've earned it. If you have a different opinion and you want to share it, feel free to do so in the comments. I hope to see you all again, but more importantly, have a wonderful day.